Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you listening right now. Thank you, Logan Larson, Mike Akins, Norm Fazekas, and Stephen Ewell. On this episode of DTNS, Good Old Games has announced a new game preservation initiative. Grubhub might provide the basis for a food super app, and Google is pausing some local news search in Europe. But how will they find out they paused it? This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, the 13th of November, 2024. From, I took your, this was supposed to be you, Rob.
Yeah, well, go ahead, man. You're doing it.
In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt. I'm just used to doing it first.
From Columbus, Ohio, I'm Robb Dunewood.
From the GTA, I'm Jenn Cutter.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
I was like, wait, I'm not in Columbus, Ohio. What's that about?
I wanted to see if you were going to read it or if you were going to catch it.
Yep. Just barely caught it. Good to be with everybody. We got some great stuff. Thank you for joining us today, Jen. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. This is a great topic to talk about.
Shall we begin with the quick hits?
Absolutely.
No objections?
U.S. District Judge James Boasberg Wednesday allowed the FTC's lawsuit against Meta in its attempt to force the company to divest itself of Instagram and WhatsApp to go forward. The commission, along with dozens of states' attorneys general, claimed that Meta, then Facebook, acquired the platforms in 2012 and 2014 to stifle competition. Judge Boasberg will meet with the two sides on November 25th to schedule the trial.
YouTube is testing a new feature expansion of its Dream Track AI that will let some creators restyle certain licensed music in 30-second clips for shorts. So you can change the mood or even the genre of an original song and then put it in the short itself. The short audio pivot page gets it and will also clearly indicate that the track was restyled with AI. So we're not trying to fool anybody. Verge doesn't know yet which songs are available for restyling, but we know like Charlie Puth and John Legend were part of the Dream Track AI. So it's a good bet they might be part of this. But it did put out a request for more information from YouTube, and it's still waiting for a reply.
Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports that Apple could announce a wall-mounted display that can control appliances, handle video conferencing, and use AI to navigate apps as early as next March. Product codenamed J490 will be positioned as a command center for the home. The device has roughly a 6-inch screen and looks like a square iPad, has a camera, and a touch interface that resembles Watch OS. The device will compete with Google's Nest Hub and Amazon's Echo smart displays and will tap into Apple's HomeKit, allowing it to control third-party thermostats, lights, lock, security camera sensors, sprinklers, and stuff like that.
AMD announced it's laying off 4% of its workforce. That's about 1,000 employees. AMD is the second biggest producer of GPUs behind NVIDIA, and the reduction in force is an attempt to bring down costs and be able to get a stronger foothold in the growing AI chip space, which is dominated by NVIDIA. In a statement, an AMD spokesperson said, as part of our aligning our resources with our largest growth opportunities, we are taking a number of targeted steps that will unfortunately result in reducing our global workforce by approximately 4%. I'm sure that made everybody feel better.
Yeah. The information sources say Meta will start running ads on Threads. We knew that was coming on that social network early next year, with the first ones probably arriving in January. The company will start with a small number and then slowly expand. Threads has 275 million monthly users and has been averaging 1 million new sign-ups per day. Meanwhile, Blue Sky just crossed the 15 million subscriber mark, adding 1 million new users just in the last week. Blue Sky COO Rose Wang recently told The Verge that the majority of new users flocking to the platform have been from the U.S. The Blue Sky app is currently the #1 app in the iOS App Store, followed by Threads, ChatGPT, and the Google app.
GOG, G-O-G, used to be called Good Old Games when it launched 12 years ago, is bringing back that moniker. It announced a new game preservation initiative, which it calls the GOG Preservation Program. Program will start with 100 DRM-free games with tech support and ongoing development to ensure future compatibility. Those games you can find in the store because they have a badge that says Good Old Game, preserved by GOG, stamped right on it.
And there's some titles that we know. First, we have Heroes, Might and Magic 3, Complete, Fallout New Vegas, System Shock 2, Myst, Masterpiece Edition, Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, and Diablo plus Hellfire. The announcement follows an October decision by the U.S. Copyright Office not to extend DCMA exemptions for video games.
So they're taking some steps to do the work that is required to get around the DMCA and doing some good stuff. I know SimCity 3000 is in here. That's one that I like. Jenn, this seems pretty exciting for folks who like video games.
It was so nice to wake up to good news today. I am really excited about this. For people who haven't bought anything from GOG before, the fact that it is DRM free is always such a perk. So definitely take a look at their catalog once in a while. But with all these old games, like right now, obviously those are some huge titles that are being preserved to run on modern systems, which is a problem for all of you old flight sim fans. You know what kind of work it takes to play those old games on modern systems, especially if you have a flight stick. The fact that GOG was able to go ahead and do this is pretty huge, because this is not like a no-name place. This is not being like an under the radar thing. This is loud. This is obvious. I hope that other places and other companies will take this kind of initiative on their own while keeping it DRM free. Because also today, Blizzard had announced the Warcraft 1 and 2 remastered versions. So with this version, much like with Warcraft 3 Reforged, you can switch to playing the originals while you are in game. If you want to play with some glorious blocky pixels in 4.3, you have that option.
That's
but
great.
For people who are, because I've heard from people who don't necessarily have the best eyesight, they are really excited to be able to play their old favorite game with text they can read. And I hadn't considered that. Like for people who do have like the giant widescreen monitors and have their text size turned up, this is an accessible way for them to play the games. They do have to buy it again, but this isn't the worst thing. I think it's a good middle ground. That's not like the first time anyone's ever done this. I think another really good example of preservation in a way is Nintendo Switch Online, because they have their Game Boy games, their Game Boy Advance games, their SNES games. Now they're getting into slightly more recent consoles. And those are almost emulator-like in that you have save states, which, you know, for people who play on the go and for people who are, let's say, really bad at a part of the game, you just save first and give it the old try without going all the way back to the beginning. But with Nintendo Switch Online, you're effectively renting the games. You own nothing. They can appear and disappear anytime they want. And as you guys know, I don't know if you've had stuff pulled from your library before for different Kindle things or game things. Sega is also delisting a whole bunch of games. They gave people a 30-day heads up for delisting 60 classic games across all the consoles and even Steam. Now, at least in this case, they are not taking away things. If you already have it, you will still get to play it. You will still be able to re-download it. But anyone who is kind of late to it, you're going to have to find other ways to play those games.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about preservation, or one of the things that's arguably important about preservation, is that it's about access. Yes, many of you in the audience can go and homebrew this and do the work and find the ROMs and build the emulators. It's eminently doable for any game, but it's work. Preservation to me is about making it so the person who doesn't have the time or knowledge or willingness to do all that work can still access the game. And that to me, Jenn, is one of the best things about what GOG is doing here, is they're providing ongoing tech support as well.
Yes, the ongoing thing, like obviously we have to see how well this pans out. I'm assuming that everyone involved in those games is kind of on board and we're not going to see things removed.
Hopefully.
But as one of those random gamers, I just pulled a random thing from my collection. Like, it is great that these big titles and titles that should have been bigger, like any of the Legacy of Kain games, are going to get this new spotlight. But like I said, I pulled a random game. This is a Nintendo game by Interplay, published by Activision. It is called Rad Gravity. It is an old NES game. It is not good. I'm not going to pretend that this is a good game. But this has a chance of being lost to media. There's a lot of games like this that like weren't great, even if they were published by like well-known names. But unless like people like me go and do like videos about them, no one's going to know they existed. And I think more stuff should be preserved, not just the top things. Like, you know, you got to figure out some mediocre movies deserve a second life. So do mediocre games.
It seems like copyright law just isn't caught up to the technology of what a game is. And I understand why developers are saying, no, we don't want libraries to be able to get this stuff and start lending it out. I get that, because they always think we can go back 72 years later and still make money if we re-release stuff. So I understand that. But as you said, Jen, the stuff can potentially get lost forever. And, there's just no way for people to go and enjoy something that came out 15, 20, 30 years ago. It's just not, there's not a copyright viable way for that to happen unless you have these types of preservation projects ongoing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it sounds like what GOG is doing here is doing the work of reaching out to the companies and saying, can we please make your game available? Can we please do this? Because it's not, this isn't like downloading ROMs off of, some other website thing. This is all above board.
Yeah.
So good stuff there. Another interesting article that caught my eye today that is probably not big news today, but I think may point the way towards the future of food delivery. One of the things with food delivery apps, they exploded in 2020 when so many people were staying home. And then, like so many things that exploded in 2020, the market started to get smaller when people started going back out into the world again. So a lot of people have seen this as an unprofitable aspect of things. Maybe somebody like an Uber can make it work because there's an efficiency with its driver network already. But we are seeing a lot of consolidation. I think there may be a future pointed out by this particular bit of consolidation that's happening today. Just Eat Takeaway is a company in the Netherlands which owns Grubhub, which is mainly operating in the United States for food delivery. They have agreed to sell Grubhub to Wonder. Now, if you know Wonder, you probably know them because they own Blue Apron, which is a meal kit system that advertises everywhere. It's one of the meal kits that people think of when they think of meal kits, right? You get all of the ingredients shipped to you in a box, and then the instructions, and you make a fresh meal. But they also offer a service under the Wonder name that brings together 30 restaurants into one food hall from around the world, or around the country, actually, not around the world, around the United States. But if you're in the New York area, there's 28 locations that you can deliver from. So you have to be near one of these. But if you are, there are Bobby Flay restaurants, Michael Simon restaurants, a Detroit pizza restaurant, a famous Atlanta barbecue place, all franchising their meals out to this food hall. So it's as if they opened a new location somewhere, but this is a dark kitchen. You can do pickup, but you can't eat in. There's no dining hall. And if you're within the delivery area, you can order meals from multiple restaurants. Like you can order one meal from Bobby Flay's restaurant, one meal from Michael Simon's restaurant, and they'll all be delivered to you in less than 30 minutes. That's the guarantee. Now, this is only in the northeastern U.S., so what Wonder gets by buying Grubhub will be nationwide presence. They get to deliver from regular restaurants, not just their own food halls, but they can integrate the food hall into the Grubhub app, which they're going to do. And they say they want to create a super app because Grubhub does grocery delivery too. So you can deliver from restaurants, groceries, the food hall, which brings food from around the country, as well as Blue Apron, all in one app. I mean, Rob, I don't know about you, but to me, this seems like a good bet to become something, or at least something to keep an eye on as the next step in the food delivery evolution.
The food hall aspect of this is kind of exciting, actually, because one of the things I like to do is oftentimes we'll be with a group of folks, we're going to see a comedy show or something like that. And you don't necessarily want to everybody go get the exact same dinner, and then you're going to go sit down someplace else who's going to potentially bring you appetizers and drinks while you're watching a comedy show. But there's a comedy club, and right across the street from it, there's this big giant food court type, type place, and you can literally get whatever you want in there. And you can even order from it and they'll bring it over to you at the comedy club, which is kind of awesome. I'm looking at this as that just on steroids, or no, they'll actually put it in a car and drive it to your place of residence or wherever it is that you are, if it's within their delivery radius. So I think that's a really cool idea. Because there's a lot of places that have, the kitchens, like I'm thinking of breakfast spots. They only run until maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then they shut down. There's a whole kitchen there that could be used to do other stuff that could potentially, work itself into this delivery. So I like this idea. I honestly never really think about Grubhub that often, but today I'm thinking about Grubhub.
Yeah. Jen, I know Grubhub doesn't operate in Canada. What do you guys use up there?
We have this thing called Skip the Dishes, which used to operate in the U.S. and then Grubhub kind of bought their U.S. locations when Skip bailed. So we have Skip, and I would love if they copied this, especially if they brought like some of the U.S. stuff. Like I haven't traveled a lot recently, and I miss some places in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York that I would love to have again. So I'm kind of hoping they decide to not hog this and franchise it a little.
Yeah, I think this is pointing where these apps are going. I don't know if people realize that Instacart has Uber Eats in it. They're not the same company, but they're partnered up. So you can get your groceries delivered through Instacart, but also get Uber Eats stuff delivered through the Instacart app. And Uber Eats does grocery delivery. Putting the meal kits into this is a logical step of like, how do you want your meal? Do you want to cook it yourself? Do you want it cooked for you? Do you just want the groceries? I think we're going to see a lot of these different services around the world, not just in the United States, start to say, we're not just delivering from a restaurant. We're not just letting you order from somewhere and go pick it up. We're providing multiple ways. The way the transportation apps have done that. Yeah, I don't know if you've opened a transportation app lately, but Uber lets you rent a car and get a scooter and a bicycle and all kinds of things.
Seems cool.
Yeah. Well, if you have thoughts about what you would like us to order you on Grubhub, put your order in on our Discord, which you can join by linking to a Patreon account at patreon.com/DTNS.
So, folks, Google is running a test in the European Union that will remove EU news articles from search results, Google News, and the Discover for 1% of users in Belgium, Croatia, Denmark, France, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, Poland, and Spain. The test is supposed to determine the impact on traffic and the overall search experience. The test is time limited, and Google says it will resume showing results from EU news publishers once the test ends. But this test almost feels like a warning. Google wants publishers to see just how much traffic they'd miss out without Google. And the company wants to aim, its aim is to actually find out, do users actually care about news in the first place? So this is a ongoing saga with Google. Google ultimately, back in the day, they used to aggregate news, and you would click on, you would go to their search engine, you would search for it, you get a link and you click and you would go to the news site. They've changed that over the years to where now a lot of what the news that you wanted to see, you don't have to go to the site. It's right there on Google's page. So all of these news organizations are losing out on that traffic. So they're saying, well, and not just these news organizations, but the governments where these news organizations exist is saying that, well, Google, you need to pay us because you are taking our traffic and we're not getting it. We're not able to monetize it because you're monetizing it. And Google is like, I don't know that we really want to pay you for that. So this test is twofold. They want to show the European Union basically said, Google, you need to give us some numbers. You need to give us some metrics, do some testing. So Google said, okay, we're going to shut this stuff off. 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot when you're talking about the number one place that basically 96% of Earth searches for when they're looking for something. So Google they're doing the test like they've been asked to do, but they're also testing for their own purposes. They want to see, can we actually get away with not having to pay these companies because the users just don't care if we don't serve up local news. It is an interesting experiment. They've done this other places. Some place they've caved, some place they haven't. But we talked about this on yesterday's show. The European Union is a ginormous market, 450 million people. So
yeah,
they're not testing it across
450 million.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of folks. So this test is going to make some people potentially rethink some things or think some things they weren't thinking before.
Yeah, Google does play nicer in these situations than Meta has. Meta often just shuts down. And in fact, Jen, right, in Canada, they took news away from Facebook and they haven't put it back yet, right?
Yeah, Google ended up making a deal with the Canadian government, and Meta said no. Now, some news organizations, especially smaller ones, have found kind of ways to post around that, but bigger places like Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, National Post, they're fine. They're easily accessible in their own apps and stuff. But local news and smaller news outlets, they have been hit very hard. And a couple of them, or if not a good chunk of them, have stopped posting on Meta-owned social media because there's no reach. It's not worth the effort. So they'll never get found.
I think this issue is extremely complex because on the one hand, Google search, forget Google News, right? Because Google News is what Rob was talking about, where they have the snippets and stuff. And there's a little more of an argument that maybe Google stops people from going because it gives you the snippets and everything. But Google search is how people find news sites. And if Google stops listing news sites in search, people won't stop using Google for searching news. They'll just go to the sites that show up. So I think it's important to remind what we said, which is international sites will still show up in European search. So if somebody searches for news, no, they won't see Der Spiegel necessarily if they're part of this test, but they will see Australian papers. They will see South African papers. They will see United States papers, Canadian papers. And there's a lot of world news in there that will apply to them, and that traffic will go there. So it is a case where the system is meant to send the traffic to the news sites through this, and you only see mainstream news complaining about this because the niche sites like technology sites, entertainment sites, they tend to have a better way to get to their audience and get them to their websites and monetize them. There's an argument to be made that journalism is still dealing with the fact that we have one worldwide market now instead of, millions of individual markets in various regions.
People don't particularly care unless you're a news wonk. If you're really into news, you may say, I want to see what the LA Times had to say about this. I want to see what this paper or that article, I want to see that. But a lot of people just want to know, what is the information? Who did it? What did they do it to? What time did they do it to them? That's what they're looking for. And if I can go and do a search and get that answer and it didn't come from a local paper, that's just the answer for me. I don't necessarily think about, well, where did this information come from? We probably all should be thinking about that because we should be thinking about it. But a lot of people just aren't. They're going to say, oh, well, this is what Google said was first. Therefore, and here's the second one. Here's the third thing. And if none of those are local and people don't really mind that, Google is saying, okay, well, maybe we don't need to pay you for this. So that is a danger that these governments and these news organizations are potentially running to, where they may find out that people don't care about getting news locally as much as maybe what they think they do.
I'll be honest. I think it's telling that Google is willing to pay in most of the markets. Now, it will start with this gambit, do these experiments. It's done it in Australia. It did it in Canada, but it ends up paying. And I think it's because it's in Google's best interests to do that. I think Google knows, because it has a dominant place in the market, that it doesn't want news sites learning how to exist without it. So it wants to use some leverage to get them to sign a better deal so they don't have to pay as much. But I suspect Google wants to sign these deals because they want to keep news publishers dependent on them. And with AI search starting, they may be less and less dependent.
Google is going to live in the margins on this. I fully expect that they are going to work out deals with the European Union. You cannot leave out one of the biggest blocks on earth when it comes to just the number of people that are going to be consuming information. But as you said, Tom, what they can do is, well, people don't really care as much as what you think they are. We don't want to pay this amount. We want to pay something that is significantly far south of that. Yeah. And what they're going to do is they're going to live in the margins, because at the end of the day, what is Google? Google is a giant advertising. It's a giant billboard, for lack of a better word. They make their money on advertising. They make their money on advertising against news, as well as everything else that they show up, that shows up in their platform. So they will work it out. I just think, as you said, Tom, maybe they're trying to get a better deal.
Yeah, I do think that it's a bit of a preservation of the Google market position to eventually come to a deal here. And I think you've seen that in Canada where, all the big publishers are happily getting paid, maybe not as much as they would have, but getting paid and showing up in Google search.
Yeah, there's always the debate about who gets how much of the pie. But we're definitely going to see this happen in more countries more often.
Yeah. All right, let's check out the mailbag. Regarding Signal getting into video conferencing, we talked about that on yesterday's show. Jason writes, I work for a human rights nonprofit and work with human rights defenders in the field who heavily rely on Signal. Even with those users, we have to use Zoom or Meet because Signal couldn't accommodate us. I think that the move is to upsell users who never wanted to go off platform but needed to. There is an audience for it. We didn't consider this sector yesterday. I appreciate you writing in, Jason.
Yeah, it's actually a good point. We almost got to that point, making it there is a reason for people to do it, but this is definitely one that we didn't think about.
And then Clinton wrote on Patreon, because I was talking about my VPN issues yesterday, especially on GDI. I have to disable VPN on my phone for the Ticketmaster app to work. Seems as though they block any traffic where they detect a VPN in use. He also went on to talk about having to disable VPN to use the Disney app on Disney cruises as well. So yeah, there's a lot of examples out there where if they can tell you have VPN at all, they're just going to stop working.
Well, we want to thank you, Jason, and you, Clinton, and also you, Jenn Cutter, for coming and hanging out with us. What are you repping today?
Today, I'm actually going to talk about Blue Sky because I'm really enjoying it there. So if you also are on Blue Sky or are thinking about hopping over, it's a busy place right now. So I am Jenn with 2 N's, JennCutter.bsky.social.
And patrons, stick around for the extended show Good Day Internet, where we talk about Amazon folding Freevee, its fast service, into Prime Video and what that could mean for free content on the platform.
You can also catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Back tomorrow with Justin Robert Young. We'll see if he survived the election. Stick around. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.